side effects, but the nice thing is it isolates your admin tool chain from what you're actually seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like it's for sandboxing. I think that's really
Yeah.
the key. Um, I don't love it for pretty much anything else, but sandboxing comes up surprisingly often on the web. Um,
I wish there was something that worked a little bit nicer, but
um, yeah.
that's why I mentioned maybe web components would be a better thing to use nowadays, uh, at least from the plugin argument, because and it's been a while since I've done web components, but if I remember correctly, when you write your web component, it creates a shadow DOM to isolate everything.
It does, but JavaScript still runs in the same context as
That's
everything else.
true. You're right, because
So
if you
someone,
do enough JS hacking, you can get back up to the main DOM.
no. You don't have to do a JS hack. You just do document.write because you're playing around with some JavaScript. It's going to wipe out the entire page, not
Right.
just the shadow root. So that's something like if you're, I think if you're letting people do only HTML, then maybe you could get away with a shadow root. But once you're into allowing any sort of JavaScript, like it's just you've got to spin up an entire JavaScript environment. Like this was my big complaint with web components to begin with, was that they didn't sandbox the JavaScript stuff, and I was like, this makes it so much less useful because now you're stuck taking care of all the dependencies of dependencies, and we haven't componentized shit then. But
Right.
yeah. um Anyway, yeah, like I wish it could. I wish it would work, but it doesn't really work.
I have a one word of the caution, about iframes. Because of the whole story about clickjacking, sometimes the administrator of the source might decide to disable iframes capabilities. And happened to me once after probably a year or year and a half of use in production. It just stopped working one day. And I'm talking of the data served by USPS. Obviously, no way to change anything production down at that moment. So keep in mind, if you do not control the source, you always might get into the situation. It's just a property of the web server to disable iframes.
Well, I would say, yeah. I mean, that's not wrong. It's kind of the browser, but like it would be a header that's sent by the server. So yeah, it's a little weirder than that.
So the administrator of the server can always make a decision to disable it, and you have to make sure or that's not going to happen, or to have a plan what to do if that happens.
Yeah. So you were iframing in the USPS site, and they disabled it, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Out of blue, no warning, no anything.
I mean, what can you could always, I mean, if you don't need people to like send that request with their own headers, you set up a proxy on your back end, right? That does the request to USPS and then just serves that exact same stuff that comes from there up from your domain.
It was a perfect way to validate the address and to validate a zip code that was later used actually to go and fetch the tax authorities to avoid the fat fingering and everything. And it worked great until one day it just stopped working.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the whole problem with depending on other people, right?
Yes.
Back in the day when like JSON was first like not invented but discovered as a format, right? Douglas Crockford would host the JSON.js. He hosted on his site and he was like, please download it and don't just link to it off my site and leech my bandwidth, which everyone would do. And then so one day he got really fed up with it and changed it so that like it would, whenever that file loaded, it would pop up an alert box that said, see, someone's been stealing our bandwidth. Talk to your system administrator. And all these websites all across the web started getting these pop-ups because people were just being rude and pulling stuff in from his site directly, even though he was like, I'm not a CDN, stop it. Yeah.
So so iframes are beautiful. Just keep in mind that everybody can actually get a new CISO who one day is going to just turn off that capabilities on a data source.
Yeah, I do wonder like why why USPS was worried about that. I guess because you can log
Click jacking.
Yes.
Because of click jacking. They get a new security person that's realized that iframe can be beautifully used for the click jacking or yes jack, however you want to call it. You know, serve the fake like.
Right. I'm just trying to think like what exactly you could, what the clickjacking attack would be. I guess if someone is logged into their USPS account, you could, in theory, clickjacking them in a way to where they would like cancel deliveries or something like that. That would be. It's hard to think about, but
I'm not sure that each and every CISO is gonna look for the possible use case. They may just find in documentation that basically that allows clickjacking and say disable it.
Yeah, I guess they just go run down the NIST list and they're like
just goes down to the list of the controls and saying, did we apply this control? No, do it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's a beautiful thing to do.
Does everyone know what
simple.
clickjacking is? Because maybe we should explain that.
Yeah, can you explain that?
Yeah, so clickjacking, basically, I mean, the way to think about it is imagine like USPS or something, or like let's say Amazon because that sounds scarier, or your bank. Let's say Amazon allows you to pull in their page via an iframe. So when your browser loads up and loads up that iframe, it gets sent to Amazon.com with your cookies for Amazon.com, even though it's iframed in your page, which is fine. It's normal. It's the way it's supposed to work. So it pulls into your account. Now, what happens if the parent page makes that iframe transparent? And then they are on that parent page are like, you're playing a video game. And then they're taking that Amazon page that's transparent and putting it on top of the areas that they know you're going to click so that you think you're clicking on the buttons on their game, but under the hood you're actually clicking on stuff on your Amazon page and redirecting packages or something that are buying things that you don't need. So yeah, that's what clickjacking is all about.
As much as I know, first was done basically with a Facebook and a like.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, you would click on a like thinking that you're liking or disliking the Facebook content, and actually you would be allowing who knows what kind of code to be executed at that moment by the parent page.
Yeah.
And that's for the many CI, so it is on a control list to disable it, unfortunately.
Yeah. So yeah, it is generally a good idea to set CSP headers. I think there was even a header before CSP that said that says my page cannot be iframed in. I also can't say that I usually bother to do that, but if I was doing like a big public-facing app, I probably would.
That's scary stuff.
I think on IIS it's an application level basically.
Yeah, I mean it's scary. It's also like far from the lowest hanging fruit hack. Like someone has to like really target you and work at it to get that to work. It's not like there's like if someone's going to clickjacking to get you, that means you're probably doing other security stuff right, and are big enough that someone cares to do that and think that they're going to get people in. So it's almost a good problem to have, and it is easily solved. So that's nice, but it can be annoying. I mean, right? Would you agree with that?
As I said, what I'm just saying is make sure that, or that it's not going to be some security person or some newly, freshly hired IIS admin or whatever web server admin that's going to basically disable it for you if you're depending on the feature.
Mm-hmm.
Or that you have a backup plan what to do if that really happens, because you might actually be put in a very unpleasant situation that your code crash becomes useless for your customer, and basically it's not your fault and there is nothing you can do about it.
Right. Yep.
Just some professional responsibility that I've heard a long time ago.
Cool. Anyone have anything else they want to bring up? All right. If not, I have a couple of things I could talk about. So we could, did I talk about, so we can stick with the web world. Did I talk about last time? Does anyone remember if I talked about symbols in JavaScript and how they can be useful for passing secret data around? Claudio's typing. Okay, cool. I'll talk that because I've done this spiel a couple of times recently, and it is a useful thing that like people do not often think about. So I'll open this up. Did I actually write anything here? No. All right. So in JavaScript, you have. Let's go ahead and start this. Okay, we'll do JS. So in JavaScript, you have this ability to do to make symbols. And anyone that's coming from like Ruby or something like that, you probably know them. But even outside there, it's strings that you're kind of supposed to be unique, right? So in JavaScript, the syntax around it is kind of complex. It's just not as easy as it should be. So you can do like something like this equals new symbol food, right? Actually, I use backticks nowadays. I'm giving up on anything but backticks. And there's not a lot you can do with it. Like you can use that as a property on an object. Const obj equals like that, and do obj.foo obj foo equals 1, 2, 3, right? Actually, let me do this. And then I will do this. I'm going to open up my node environment. There it is. And then we're going to just take this and send the whole thing into there. What did I do? Oh, it shouldn't be like that. So if I do this, here, this is the interesting thing here. I can go ahead and do my obj, and you can see it's got a property that's not a string or not a number, it's a symbol. There's not a ton you could do with that, but this gets kind of really interesting. Because here's the cool thing about that. Symbols are like this string that I put in the symbol foo. That is just a description that determines how it's printed. They're not actually the same thing. So if I do foo1 and if I do foo1 like that, and let's duplicate it, foo2 like that, and if I execute that, buffer. And I come in here and I do foo1 equals foo2. They're not the same thing, even though foo1, foo2. It's just a label, right? The identity is different. So what that means is if I created a symbol in a closure, so const create, we'll do do stuff. We'll put it this way, some module, right? So inside of here, let's say we're going to create a module that is going to process some data. So let's say, well, okay. Let's say we are going to take in some data in here. So we'll take in an obj, right? And we're going to return two functions. So var process data, process obj equals, actually we'll do it this way. So there's an object, and all we're going to do is say, so we'll do var been processed equals symbol has been processed. Okay, and you do obj dot has been processed equals true. Var has been processed equals obj, and then we're just going to return. Or actually, let's do it this way. Has been prepared. Prepared, and now we do process. So we want to have a rule where basically every object is going to have to be prepared before it is processed, right? So we're going to return prepare process. So that is something that's actually kind of difficult to do normally in JavaScript. You could put like secret properties with underscore on the object or something like that, but that doesn't super work well because those are JSON serializable and someone can just put that property where they can override each other. The other thing you could do is maybe create an array which keeps track of all the objects that have been prepared, but that's a problem because it's a memory leak. Stuff won't be memory collected. We kind of have weak set, which you can sort of do that for environments that support it, but that's limited as well. Like if we were, for example, generating IDs, weak map isn't a thing that works super well. So what you could instead do is do this, and it's inside of here we do if has been prepared in obj, if not, throw error, prepare it first. Okay, and we'll just do something like var prepare process equals some module. Okay, so if I do that here, so look what happens now. I have I can create my obj, right? And then I can try to process it. And I get an error. Well, is that true? Process. Oh. There we go. So now I can, there we go, process obj. I get an error right here, prepare it first. If I go ahead and prepare it and then process it, now it works, right? And it's interesting how often this like pattern comes up in JS, and like people don't know about it. So like here's the thing, like if there is no way to get a conflict, there's no way to get that symbol because the only reference to that symbol exists inside of that module. It is secret data about this object that lives entirely within that module and is going to be garbage. And because it lives actually on the object, it's going to be garbage collected without it. Now, when we print it to the console, we can see that something's there. But if I do if I do, let's say, object.keys obj, it's not in there, right? In fact, if I do a for in loop, it's not in there. If I do json.stringify obj, symbols are not stringifiable, so it's not in there. And really, the only way of getting that key out, there's a object get keys, something like that. There's like a special property, get symbol keys, get own property symbols, right? Like this is the only way you could actually get it, which is like you have to call a very, very specific method that says, yeah, this is really what I want to do. I want to mess around with the internals of an object. And then you can kind of get it. But even that won't really work if you, for example, set this on the prototype of an object or something like that. That you have to then walk the entire prototype chain to get it. So this becomes a really, really nice, really useful technique for when you have to when you want these APIs where you do want to enforce an error check that people go through a sequence of things where they pass around data first to this, then to that, then to that, and give them nice helpful errors if they don't do that. Anyone have any questions about that? Because I personally think that's super cool, but and again, something that's missing from JavaScript. But I can.
So, George, would this be useful for creating privately scoped objects inside of modules then?
Yes. Well, I mean, a privately scoped object inside of a module is just an object and you put it in that variable. I would say it's more like you create a module and someone passes you an object or of some sort, and it's a way of creating privately scoped properties on that object that are probably privately scoped to you. Like there's not the equivalent in like C#, like it doesn't have it. Like the only equivalent is a weak reference to it, is to create a map full of weak references.
Okay.
Yeah, there's not really an equivalent thing in like C# or Java to that, as far as I know. It's the like kind of equivalent of like in Python, you'll see like stuff like attach like underscore properties to objects and to say, or typically properties that like start with double underscore or end with double underscore, which is supposed to connote that like this comes from somewhere else and you really, really shouldn't mess with it. But like this is, JavaScript is not better in a lot of ways, but like it's definitely better in this way than that nonsense.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, this can get like really, really nice and useful for creating APIs. Also, just as a side note, this workflow I've been doing where I'm just like writing some code in here and then like being able to go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to send this line of code to a running terminal program, to a running CLI, and be able to experiment with stuff directly from there is so stupid useful. And I love it. And this is like, I've only really recently started doing this with JavaScript. And it annoys me that every editor doesn't have this ability built in. Like you have to hack around it. But this is kind of like what the whole REPL-driven development thing that Lisp people talk about is. And it's so darn powerful for like writing out a process and getting stuff done. Interesting caveat with JavaScript is it only really works if you use var. It doesn't work if you do const, because if I do const, and here, const foo equals 1, 2, 3, and send that over, right, it creates it, but then if I try to evaluate that line again, it gives me an error. So you can't really do const if you're doing this technique. So what I actually end up doing is using var for everything, and then like when I'm done with it, I just do %s change all vars to const. Just eventually, which is a minor annoyance, but that's cool. It is reminiscent of LinkPad, except for like this is you're writing code directly in there, and the thing you can't really do with LinkPad? Maybe you can. Like in LinkPad, the entire code run is isolated, right? I can't create a class, right? I can't just
You
run
can.
this. Okay.
So LinkPad at the most basic level lets you write statements, but there's a drop down at the top window there that lets you write more than that. So well, I like some of the more advanced stuff that I've done with LinkPad. I've created classes inside of it and executed that code all kind of as if I was writing like in a main method, for example.
Right, but like you can't do like, okay, so like if I do tracker, but I think it launches one app domain per execution. Like it can't do like I have tracker right there, and then I come here, I change it plus equals 456 and run that. Oh, right now I get 579 in there. Like it's all within the same process, and there's state that's maintained, so I can run bits of code
Gotcha.
the other. And
Gotcha.
then,
Yeah, the states are different with each execution in LinkPad, so
right.
that's the difference.
Yeah,
So
and that's just really, I mean, like
that's
it's not.
nifty.
Yeah, it can also shoot you in the foot a lot too, but it can be really really useful for like this iterative exploratory workflow. It's really cool. I actually one of the like I there is this mode in some way for almost every single language in Emacs, and I've been using it a lot more lately. Yeah.
And then the other thing it reminds me of is, and I see this a lot in .NET with Visual Studio and similar IDEs, is the immediate window. So if you pause your execution state,
Yeah.
I kind of go in there and I'll do similar stuff to manipulate it to see if this idea works, but it's not complete like this is.
Right. Like you can't like create new classes then.
No,
In the immediate window?
you might be able to, but I haven't tried. The immediate windows you've been able to do a little bit more over the past few 5 years, but it it's not complete like this. Like there's some like if they combine LinkPad and immediate window, then you'd be able to do that. But I don't think that exists.
And
Maybe in
then
LinkPad Pro.
yeah, the additional thing that I would want them to do is the ability to say like highlight this and say, okay, send just that region with
Right.
a shortcut key directly in there. And if that happens, then you're getting there, definitely. Like say, okay, and now that's when I'm just executing this piece of code, and I don't have to like copy paste. It just generates a very different workflow.
Maybe try.net is no, because that's still executing all of that code there. No, I don't think they have this in .net.
Yeah, yeah. I would imagine it's kind of sort of useful, but yeah. Cool. Talked about that. Also talked about this. Nice. These are all my like things that I want to talk about at some point. All right. What else should we talk about? Talk about this EC2 thing. I don't know. Let's talk about Immer.js, because otherwise I'm just talking about cool Emacs stuff, and it is not relevant to anyone. So has anyone here actually tried Immer.js ever? Okay. It's a JavaScript library for immutability. And it's honestly pretty cool. The thing that's really neat about it is it's super small, like it's one function, provide, pretty well produce, I guess. And what it lets you write immutable code as if you weren't. So basically, you have objects, or you have an object array, variable, whatever, and you want to transform, right? But you want to create a full copy of it with the transform, because you want to leave the other one alone, because there's things that have references to it, and you don't want to change it under change it, you know, have state changing underneath for it. So you have this produce function, make it larger, that takes the original object, and then you just write a lambda for exactly how you want to modify it. Like what the input into that lambda is an exact copy of that object. And you then go ahead and modify it directly. However, what it's doing on the hood is it's not modifying that object at all. It's actually creating an entirely new object which has these modifications in it. And it's a lot more clever than just running like, you know, a clone operation on the original and then letting you do that stuff. Because if it was that, that wouldn't be that interesting. What they're actually doing, I believe this is using a proxy to record all your operations on it. And then they create a tree internally of all the modifications they want to the object. And what ends up happening is when you do that, you can share state between different versions of the same object. So for example, if I went and like created 500 modifications of the same object, so I wouldn't just have 500 copies of all the properties of this object in memory. I would have that one original template and then 500 kind of change sets, which produce new objects in turn, which is really, really interesting. And I don't know, it's just really neat. I've been playing around with it a lot. I've had it on my radar for a long time and just haven't had a reason to use it. I like this a lot more than like the other immutability solutions in JavaScript because of just how darn simple it is and how different it is. It feels a lot more right. And yeah, it's a really cool thing. I would definitely recommend people try it out. I'm using it on one small project right now, where it was just annoying to do, but like, yeah, they have some cool examples of things you can do with it here. And honestly, at the point where, in my opinion, where you land at something, you're like, oh, this is like legitimately different, actually doing something in a cool computer sciencey way. There's trees involved under the hood and stuff like that. It's worth paying attention to. I could imagine something like this even being rolled into like JavaScript proper at some point. So yeah, this was a neat one. Really a good step toward functional programming with a language that makes it kind of hard sometimes. Neat. All right, I'm going to tack that off my list. What else do we want to talk about? Anyone else have anything they want to bring up? Talk about stuff that's not relevant to other people more? All right. All right. I guess I'll do one more. Here's one. So I'm kind of very, very slowly studying for the AWS Certified Solution Architect, whatever, for the AWS exam. I'm running through a course, and in it, I have to, I'm running through this course and we're doing EC2 stuff. So in the course, they're doing a lot of SSH into there and so on, which is all well and good, but I want to do stuff like a slicker way, I guess. And I have a tool for me here. So I do a lot of note taking, and I have a tool in Emacs in Orgmode, which is super, super powerful and can do scripting directly in it. So I can run, like you saw me before, I can run bits of code directly in this document. Yeah. So AWS Session Manager, there's all sorts of stuff, but Alper, the issue isn't that I have a problem with SSH. The issue is that I am taking notes, and I want to have executing code directly in my notes. And the thing that kind of ends up happening with that is like, well, that's all well and good, but the code I need to execute isn't on my machine. Yeah, Python notebook is fine. Orgmode is like Jupyter, just like way more powerful. But yes, I'll show some stuff with it that's neat. So let me go ahead and start this EC2 instance. Is it started? Is it fully started yet? No, it's still pending. Do I have an IP address yet? Not yet. Well, once it comes up, I'll show y'all.
Hey, George.
Yeah.
The solution architect exam that you're studying for AWS, how much networking is on that? I'm just kind of curious what the difference between that one is and Azure's solution architect.
It's not. So far, it's not a lot. Let me here. I pull up the demi for it. Like I'm actually just running through this dude's course. Where is it? Oh, yeah. Certified Solutions Architect. Why is it saying that? I have it. I have this course. My learning.
Sorry, I didn't mean to knock completely off course.
No, it's kind of that EC2 is starting anyway. Oh, it's because I'm in this browser. I don't use Brave for this. Normally I use Chrome. So yeah, like what it's covering. Like if you really look through it, like okay, this is EC2 and some IAM stuff. So that's just the VM stuff. Then a little bit like not a lot at all about their storage, different storage options. I guess it's a decent amount. Database options, DNS, and just solutions architecture stuff, S3 storage. Yeah, like there's not a ton here about networking. I guess CloudFront is a little bit about that. Shoot, I'm realizing there's a lot more of this than I have to go through.
Okay. Well, anyway, so the Azure one though has a good amount of networking.
Yeah, but I mean, like also like the solutions architect one is, I do think that's probably like kind of a misnomer, because like if you really like look through what's on there, like it's the one step up above the beginner level test. Actually, I think I created a little diagram.
You're saying the AWS is one step up?
Yeah, so here it is. Yeah, I created this. So you have like this cloud practitioner exam, which is, as far as I can tell, it's just like, okay, you're not a complete AWS idiot exam. Like you've seen the console. Like I don't think any like. I just feel like I can skip right over. Like I haven't spent a ton of time in AWS either. I haven't had any trouble skipping over it. I think I've seen that it's recommended before. Then solutions architect is, this is kind of how it flows, but really like solutions architect is the one most people take next. So it's not actually like a super hard one. And then people will often jump to one of these other ones, and then they'll jump to like this big one. I don't know. I just connected these ways because that was the way it was connected in the thing that I was reading. But really, like as an actual workflow, would be this to this to this or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think from my impression of the solutions architect associate one is it's not really entry level, because like you have to like, they talk about architecture stuff, but it is kind of entry level into AWS world and kind of a low bar sort of thing almost, which obviously it's still important. Kind of actually people do look at that one, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So here's the kind of thing that I want to show. That okay, EC2. So where is my AWS? not that. Did I just close my tab by accident? That would suck. AWS EC2. Here's my instances. There's a running one right here. Okay. So I'm going to copy this address. So again, the idea here is I'm doing everything like directly in my notebook as I'm taking notes and so on. So first of all, I want to be able to kind of like talk to it, right? So there's a private key I set up, I added, let's see, is this in my notes? Oh, it's in here. Yeah, okay. So let's say, I'm just gonna, so I'm gonna create a shell block. And inside, I could go ahead and like SSH inside of it. Oh boy. But instead, I could do dir SSH. Yeah, here's how it looks. I want something like this. And just let me put the right stuff in there, the right DNS in there. So if I do this, and then let's say I type who am I in there, and I run this. And what's going on? Failed to connect. Failed to connect. It might be. I might have to run it one time outside of there just to get the fingerprinting set up. SSH the EC2 user at what am I doing wrong? Oh, right. I need to do this. I don't think I do. SSH. No, what am I? Why is that? Oh, it's EC2 dash user. That's why. So it's just not logging me in. Yes. That's weird. Let's see. Is this running at all? It says it's running, but it's also not responding to anything. I don't believe you. Yeah, like this shouldn't be just spinning like that. What if I copy this address? Oh, it did actually log into there very quickly at the very end. So does that mean it'll let me in now? No. Well, hell, that's not. I'll prep the demo beforehand next time. But it does. You can actually do really cool things. Let's see if this works. Just one more time. No. You can do really cool things from here, like open up files directly via SSH on another server once I set this up. In fact, if you like kind of look through what I was doing further up in my notes. So right here, what I'm doing is I'm actually taking a file that has this text and placing it directly on this server, right? So first of all, here I have a script that's going to log into SSH as this user and run this stuff on that machine. Then I have this right here. It's going to take a file, a text file. It has this, and it's going to put it right in there via SSH onto this machine, but then also pipe that through sudo because it's going into var/www.html where you need sudo to write to. And then on my machine, I can go in and curl over that and get the contents of that file served back via port 80. So that's super cool with this sort of stuff. Unfortunately, I need to prep it beforehand because clearly something's going wrong with that, with my keys or something. But overall, there it is. So now if I go ahead and do this, what am I? Still giving me an error. Did I type something wrong? That is EC254158445. Oh, where's my EC2 user stuff in here? That's what I'm missing. I'm missing a user, EC2-user at. So if I go ahead and type this in, it's going to go ahead and make that connection. Do that. I can write some text about it, explaining exactly what it does. I can even write ls. Here's home directly on there. I can run commands. I could take something like this. So let's say I'm going to do this, and it's to 54158-42. I should just have used a DNS, set up a DNS for this, but like let's say actually let's do this. So if I go ahead and I curl this right now, as you would imagine, I get 158 and then 142. If I curl this right now, I should get, that file. Now, if I go ahead and say, hey there, VBB, save that, and it's going to save this directly to that machine, except it won't because I typed the IP address wrong. It should be 158. Did I type it wrong again? 54158421001. I see. Typed it. I need to do it. Update it here. 42. Now I do it. Opening connection. Nah, still did something wrong. Anyway. Able to and get a brand new, super cool, really nice note-taking workflow for figuring all this stuff out. It is, but I clearly screwed something up on here. So I'm just going to end it there since we're at time anyway. People should learn Orgmode and Emacs, but that's fine. Don't, and I'll just keep using it in badass ways. That's it. Thank you, everyone. Claudio, you have audio back yet? All right. Thanks, everyone. Next time I'll try not to talk so much. Thank you. Bye.